Hi lads, and welcome to my Fury Warrior PvE raiding DPS guide, updated for 6.2. There will be a number of sections to this guide which can be accessed using the navigation bar above. We will be covering gearing, talents, glyphs and damage, though if you subscribe to my channel you'll see many more videos covering more precise topics. Let's jump into the guide. First of all, we'll begin with the essentials in order to ensure that your warrior is tuned up properly to maximise his pressure in a PvE environment. The stat priority for Fury Warrior can't really be described as a priority system. It is kind of a priority system because you need to get certain stats first, but it's more of a breakpoint system. So let me go through it. Basically, you must gain about 25% crit rating, 11% haste rating, and once they are obtained, you can leave the rest for mastery. This is because when you deal critical damage with Bloodthirst, you gain the Enrage buff, which increases your damage by 10%. It's basically how Fury Warrior works. It works around this Enrage buff or the rotation, but we'll talk about that more in the damage section. This means you should enchant full crit and gem full crit, but if you have the breakpoint of 25%, or if you have the 4 set bonus of a new set for 6.2, then mastery will become more useful. So does gem and enchant that instead. Haste is important because it reduces the cooldown of Bloodthirst and your global cooldown, which means more crits and more uptime on Enrage. Mastery increases your damage while Enrage. It's just as simple as that, it's more damage. As for which weapons you go for, you know, is it one-handed, is it two-handed? The difference between them both is extremely tiny. In fact, there's pretty much no difference. Really, just go for what you have. You know, the best weapons you have that you've been able to loot. But at the end of the day, lads, there's something quite special about wielding two-handed weapons. I mean, it's the only spec that can do it in the game. You may as well just go for it. So let's go into talents. In the first tier, the most viable option most of the time is going to be double tap. However, Warbringer, it can come in useful when you need to interrupt trash casts or literally just need to pin them down. In the second tier, I'd recommend Impending Victory. This heals overall the same as in range regeneration, but with a shorter cooldown, which means you'll have you know, your healing more on demand for when you actually need it. It also deals a little damage, so you won't lose out on DPS that much. In the third tier, Sudden Death is the greatest DPS increase, and it's literally just as simple as that. In the fourth tier, Stormbolt is the greatest DPS increase on a single target, though Shockwave may come in useful, because since the stun is kind of useful to take down ads or trash. And Dragon Roar, will give you a higher DPS if you are like occasionally required to AoE in a fight. I'd say in the fifth tier that Vigilance is the most useful most of the time. However, Mass Spell Reflection may come in useful when certain spells are required to be reflected to protect the raid. In the seventh tier, Bloodbath will give you the most DPS increase in a single target fight. However, you may want to opt for Blade Storm when AoE is useful. In the last tier, Siegebreaker will provide the biggest DPS increase in a single target fight. However, with great knowledge of a boss fight, then Anger Management may come out on top, you know, if you know how long a boss fight is going to last. Ravager will also prove useful to wipe out groups of ads, so go for Ravager when there's a lot of ads. Now let's run through the glyphs. The first glyph you're going to need is the Glyph of Unending Rage, which will increase your rage pool and help you out, so it would be more difficult to actually cap on your rage, and when you cap on your rage you end up losing DPS, so definitely go for this glyph. The rest are primarily a utility advantage, so remember to change them depending on your current situation. I'm just going to, you know, explain what they all do. Glyph of Bull Rush will give you an extra, some more extra raid. It's kind of helpful for when you are charging quite frequently in a fight, you know, to take down ads or something like that. The Glyph of Enraged Speed is also quite useful to increase your mobility, so if you need to move around a lot, I'd definitely go for that. The Glyph of Rude Interruption is also useful for situations where you can persistently interrupt spellcasts and benefit from the damage buff, so if there's a lot of casting going on, then go for this glyph. Definitely a worthwhile DPS increase. Both of the Heroic Leap glyphs are also quite useful when extra mobility is actually required. Glyph of Wind and Thunder can also be useful when there are big groups of ads or trash, or they're, you know, quite simply just too far apart. For Miner, I'd recommend the Glyph of a Subtle Defender, so you can take advantage of defensive stance without actually, you know, killing yourself. And the Glyph of Intimidating Shout is also useful for taking on groups of trash without, you know, accidentally pulling off a path because of the fear. So before we jump into the actual abilities and the rotations and all that kind of thing, you must understand how a class works. Basically, you generate rage from auto attacks while in battle stance, and other abilities can also generate it. Once you get a critical hit with your Bloodthirst, you become enraged and gain a 10% damage increase, which means you want to do as much damage as possible while enraged, but minimise your rage spent while not enraged. Let's jump through the priority system in order to maximise your damage as a Fury Warrior. If you are not enraged, simply wait for Bloodthirst to become available before spending Rage or using Raging Blow procs, unless by doing so you would either reach maximum rage or waste Raging Blow procs. Use Berserker Rage if your rage falls off and Bloodthirst is on cooldown. Use Execute if you have a sudden death proc. Use Wild Strike when you have more than 90 rage. If you have a Blood Surge procs, then just use Wild Strike whenever you have the proc. Use Raging Blow when you have 2 stacks. Use Storm Bolt or Dragon Roar, whenever it's available. Use Raging Blow, remember to use your Raging Blows, definitely when you're enraged. Use Wild Strike if you are not enraged. And that's pretty much it. Now let's jump through all the cooldowns. Recklessness should be used in the opener, since this is normally when your weapon and trinket procs start to happen, but it should also be aligned with things like Time Warp, Heroism or Bloodlust. Before you use Bloodbath, make sure you have like a lot of rage, so a lot of rage to dump, and a lot of abilities available, including Storm Bolt and Dragon Roll and stuff like that. Basically before you can do a load of damage, so you can turn that massive damage burst into dots. Remember to use Blade Storm as often as possible when there are like 2 or more targets available to damage. And that's pretty much it, lads. Just remember to prioritise dealing as much damage as possible while you are enraged, and while you are not enraged, focus on becoming enraged as quickly as possible. I hope you enjoyed this guide. At the end of the day, this is only intended to be a fairly basic one. It's not massive. It was never going to be massively complicated. If you're looking for that massively complicated guide, then there's a lot of forums out there which will probably help you out. Anyway, my name is the Meta Goblin, and until my next video, ciao.